Now, what makes our company somewhat unique is that our tinting system is based on waterborne colorants for waterborne paint, solvent-borne colorants for solvent-borne paint, and the colorant that we're using is paste. It's much stronger. It's the strength of industrial paste. Okay? When we tint a can of paint, Charlie Spina, when we tint a can of transparent Hollandlac, we can put up to what, 20% colorant? 20% colorant in the can. When you buy a can of paint domestically tinted with UTCs in a transparent base, it has up to 6% colorant in it, right? So the reason these paints, it's no miracle. The reason why they're giving you such incredible covering power is because they have 3 times as much colorant in them. But the paint which you buy in a Fine Paints of Europe retailer off the rack, and we have one of them in the stores, with colored lids. Here's one. So you could walk into a paint store in Boston and you could buy a can of Rembrandt red in a factory color. And then you could go back to that store later in the day and say, the client really liked it. I need 15 more gallons of that. They will tint it in the back room using the exact same colorants that were used in the Netherlands with the same formula. So you could literally paint half of a door vertically with the factory and half with the tint made in the back room, and it's going to be exactly the same color. We're the only paint company in the world that can claim that. So every product that we make, that's why we guarantee 2-coat coverage. Everything is factory quality because everything is made with factory colorants. Every one of our retailers is essentially a paint factory. If you visit a domestic paint factory and they're making factory colors, it's kind of like a winery or a soda plant. They're going to make a 5,000-gallon batch, and then they're going to run it down a line, and they're going to can empty cans, right? If you visited the factory in the Netherlands where we get our paints, and they're making factory colors like this, you're going to see a string of cans of base coming down the line. And they're going to go under a filling machine that dispenses colorant into each can individually. And then they go down a little bit further, they get a lid. A little bit further, they get flipped. A little bit further, they get agitated and then put into a case. So they're making paint 1 can at a time, just like paint is made in a paint store, 1 can at a time. Okay? Where does the gloss come from? How do they achieve such an incredibly high level of gloss? By fineness of grind, which is the same explanation for how they achieve a coverage rate of over 600 square feet per gallon. If we were to do an analogy and we had a table that was painted black on top, and we wanted to put, let's say we cut a line down the middle, put a tape line down the middle, and our objective is to wipe out the black so we can't see black. And we're going to use rock salt on one half of the table and table salt on the other half of the table. Where we're using the table salt, it's going to be a 1/16 of an inch thick. Where we're using the rock salt, it's going to be a 1/4 inch thick. Okay? So, one similarity I have noted between the paint industry and the wine industry is that in both industries, time is considered a 4-letter word. Paint makers in this country have really tried to speed things up. They don't even grind pigments anymore. They buy colorants from companies that sell colorants, and that's how they make their paint. In the Netherlands, high-quality producers still grind pigments. And the pigments that go into our Hollandlac Brilliant, for instance, are ground as much as 3 weeks, okay, to get that's very small particle size in a very primitive device called a ball mill. Also fascinating is that the ball mill, which was invented around 1810, is still accepted as the means by which you can grind pigments to their smallest possible size. Most American companies use what's called a roller mill, which is much, much quicker. They'll try to do an 8-hour shift, what our Dutch friends take 3 weeks to accomplish. But the pigments coming out of the ball mills in the Netherlands are very like powder-like. Okay, you can't even feel any solid. It's almost like a powder liquid, and that's how we're getting this incredible depth of color, incredible color retention, and incredible durability. Because when the binder that's in these enamels is holding together these pigment particles, which are millions of little particles, imagine these particles are all very, very small in size. The gap between them is very small in size. So it's that tightness of finish which produces the incredible gloss level, incredible depth of color, and incredible durability.